Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I'll continue bringing you the latest developments in the turbulent love story of single mother Ly Hoai Ca and the young police officer, Hùng. As you all know, after countless hardships, Hoai Ca and Hùng finally decided to live together under one roof. It seemed that such simple happiness would be the well-deserved reward for them both after so many difficult days. Yet, reality turned out to be far more complicated. Life together soon gave rise to new challenges. Hoai Ca had to shoulder the burden of raising her child alone while struggling with unstable business work. Hùng, though deeply in love with her, was weighed down by the heavy pressures of the police force, the place where he had devoted his entire youth and considered it a part of his very blood and soul. On one side was the career he once swore to dedicate his life to, and on the other was the woman he loved and the little home waiting for him to protect. Late at night, when Hoai Ca was already asleep, Hùng would quietly sit on the wooden chair in front of the porch, his eyes lost in thought as he gazed into the darkness. The same question kept echoing in his mind: if I continue this job, will I have any time left for my family? But if I give it up, will I lose myself and the ideals I've clung to all these years? So, at the crossroads between love and career, which path will Hùng choose? And will that decision lead his and Hoai Ca's love to a happy ending or open the door to yet another storm? Stay tuned for today's full episode to discover the answer. When the call from the agency came, a stern voice echoed through the receiver. Comrade Hùng, report to the director's office this afternoon to discuss your leave request and transfer order. As the words ended, Hung's grip on the phone tightened unconsciously, his breath caught in his throat. A wave of dread surged over him, and his heart pounded like war drums. On the way to headquarters, the familiar streets suddenly felt heavy, almost foreign. Each step on the pavement seemed to add tons of weight upon his shoulders. He remembered the early days of wearing the police uniform. This place had once been his pride, his very blood and flesh. But now it felt distant, estranged. The meeting room door creaked open, and before him was a new face, the leader who had just been transferred in, replacing his former superior, the one who had understood his personal situation. The change left Hùng with a fleeting sense of emptiness. Bowing respectfully, his voice hoarse, he said, "Reporting, comrade. I am present." The atmosphere in the room was so solemn that the faint sound of a pen tapping against the desk could be heard. Hùng tried to present his request, his voice trembling yet resolute. "I earnestly ask to remain here in the locality, because my family, my circumstances are extremely difficult. I plead with the agency to consider granting me this request." The new leader remained silent for a long while, his sharp gaze piercing through Hùng, before replying slowly. "I understand. But you must also understand this. Once you are an officer of the People's Police, you serve the fatherland wherever you are needed. Regulations are clear. When the term ends, transfer is mandatory. There are no exceptions." His voice grew firmer, tinged with both admonition and counsel. "Comrade Hùng, I advise you to think carefully. The sector needs people. The collective needs people. Do not sacrifice the career you have worked so hard to build for personal matters. You are still young, still capable of serving. Do not abandon it halfway." The words fell like both command and trial. Hùng bowed his head, sweat beading on his forehead, fists clenched tight, his chest wrung with torment. In his mind appeared the image of Hoai Ca waiting at home, their little child longing for his return, and the dream of a peaceful home. Yet, right before him stood the ideals and honor of the People's Police, an oath he had sworn from the very beginning. The air in the room thickened, each word spoken etched deeply into Hung's mind. He knew this decision would change everything. As for the leave request, the new superior spoke plainly. "This application cannot be approved. At present, The force is short of personnel, especially in the new unit. If you do not accept the reassignment, you may submit a resignation instead, so we can allocate and replace you. But temporary leave is not an option. Those words cut into Hung's heart like a sharp blade. Before him remained only two bleak paths: to resign entirely, severing all ties with the force, or to accept relocation to a distant place, which meant leaving behind Hoai Ca and the fragile home they had just begun to build. The new superior was not entirely cold. He studied Hung for a long moment, then his voice dropped lower. I understand. Everyone has their own hardships. But you must remember, life is about learning to adapt. Do not cling forever to what has passed. Try to open your heart to a new environment. Sometimes, change itself opens a door we never thought existed. The words fell slowly, not harsh, yet as heavy as stone pressing down on Hung's chest. He bowed his head, fingers tightly entwined, silent to the point where he could hear the quick, urgent beats of his own heart. For an instant, his mind wavered. Part of him longed to stay, to be with Hoai Ca, to preserve the fragile happiness they had just discovered. Yet another part tormented him, reminding him that this job was not just a career, it was his ideal, his honor, and the youth of more than 10 years poured out with all his strength and faith. Hung's eyes quivered faintly. He felt as if he had been pulled out of an old dream and forced to face a harsh reality. A deep sense of regret surged within him, regret for the profession he had clung to for a decade, for the nights and days he had braved danger without hesitation. He knew well, letting go would not merely be a choice, but a surrender of his entire past. The air in the room thickened, pierced only by the heavy tick of the clock. Hung sat there, his eyes fixed on the floor, while his heart hung suspended between two diverging roads. At the end of the meeting, the new superior closed the file, his voice firm yet heavy with authority. Comrade Hung, this is the ultimatum. The schedule has been finalized. Next Monday, you must report to the new unit to assume your post. That means you have only 1 week to decide. Either accept the transfer and continue serving in the force, or submit a resignation so we can reassign personnel. I urge you to think very carefully before giving your answer. Hung froze. In that moment, the entire room seemed to fall silent, broken only by the steady ticking of the clock. He rose to his feet, forcing down the weight in his chest, and bowed respectfully. Reporting, comrade. Understood. Thank you for your concern and guidance. Before leaving, he was handed a certificate of merit from his previous term, a testament to years of tireless dedication. As his fingers closed around the paper, its red seal still vivid, a sharp pain pierced his chest. Memories rushed back, the long days patrolling the streets, the dangers faced to protect the people, the frigid night shifts endured with pride because he was wearing the uniform of the People's Police. Stepping out through the gates of the agency, the late afternoon sky loomed gray, heavy with clouds. In his pocket, the certificate gleamed faintly, yet his heart felt weighted like stone. The thought of abandoning nearly a decade of service left him hollow, as though he were plunging into an endless void. And then, the faces of Hoai Ca and little Tony flashed in his mind. Hoai Ca's gentle smile, her eyes filled with unwavering trust, and Tony, the small boy who always ran after him, calling Papa Hung whenever he came home. Just imagining being separated from the two of them made his heart tighten painfully. At this crossroads, Hung felt torn apart. On one side stood his career, his ideals, his honor, and the past he had lived and bled for. On the other was love, the fragile home just beginning to blossom, yet more precious to him than anything else. He walked slowly along the familiar street, each step sinking into the weight of his own turmoil. In that moment, Hung did not know which decision he could make. That day, Hoai Ca did not go out to the fields as usual. Instead, she decided to spend the whole morning tidying up the garden, neglected ever since she had left the house. Wild grass had grown thick, dry leaves covered the pathway, and the barren beds of soil seemed weary after so many days without care. Carefully, Hoai Ca gathered piles of leaves and picked up dry branches. Sweat dotted her forehead, yet her eyes shone with determination. She thought, if this garden could be brought back to life, then the home itself would also feel warmer, more complete. At noon, she stopped by the market to buy a few young saplings, not only to provide shade, but also as symbols of hope for the future. Her hands, more used to trading goods, clumsily filled soil and planted each tree, but inside she felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. Just as she was busy with the soil, the familiar figure of a woman appeared at the gate. It was Ha's mother, a longtime neighbor who had cherished Hoai Ca since childhood. Her voice rang out warmly. "Ca, is that you? You've been back for some time, but today's the first chance I've had to visit." Overjoyed, Hoai Ca rushed to greet her, wiping the dirt from her hands. "Hello, Auntie. It's been such a long time. Please come in for some tea." They sat together under the porch, steam rising from hot cups of tea, their laughter and conversation filling the once silent space with warmth. After a while, Hoai Ca gradually opened her heart. She confided honestly about the hardships she was facing, from her unstable business to the heavy pressures Hùng was enduring at work. Her voice trembled as she mentioned his looming transfer order, and her fear that he might abandon the police force after so many years of devotion. The older woman listened intently, nodding, then spoke slowly. "Ca, I understand. In every era, earning a place in the police force and holding a position like Hung's is no easy feat. It's the result of a long, grueling journey, something not everyone achieves. If he gives it up now, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for him to rebuild later." Hoai Ca fell silent for a long time, then nodded gently. Deep inside, she had always thought the same, but never had the courage to say it to Hùng. Now, hearing Ha's mother's words, she felt as though she had found support for her thoughts. The two women sat there, their eyes drifting toward the small yard where the young saplings had just been planted. They shared the same belief. Though Hung's path was full of trials, as long as he held firm, the future would surely open wide before him. While Hoai Ca and Mrs. Ha were still chatting under the porch, Hung's familiar figure appeared at the gate. His police uniform was gone. He wore only a simple shirt, his face shadowed with fatigue. As he stepped inside, he bowed politely. "Good evening, Auntie. I just got back." Mrs. Ha smiled kindly and nodded. "Ah, Hùng, you're back. Ca has told me a little, and I wanted to ask about your work. How are things with the paperwork?" Hùng sighed, his eyes clouded with heaviness. Sitting down beside Hoai Ca, he spoke slowly. "They've given me 1 week to decide. Either accept the transfer to the new unit, or submit a resignation altogether. I honestly don't know what to choose. I care for Hoai Ca and little Tony. I don't want to be far from them. And I still want to stay close by, save up, and reclaim the old house, everything I've poured my efforts into before. If I give it all up, I'll feel utterly defeated." The air grew somber. Hoai Ca gazed at him silently, her heart aching to see the weight he carried. Mrs. Ha gently set down her teacup, her voice warm yet firm. "Hùng, I understand your worries. But don't let the house weigh you down. A home can be lost and rebuilt, but your career, your future, that must be preserved. If you keep striving, one day you won't just have one house, you'll be able to build a brighter, fuller home than ever before." Hoai Ca nodded softly and added, "I think so too. We can always rebuild our home, but if you abandon your career now, it will be nearly impossible to start again later." I don't want you to lose a decade of hard work to one hasty decision. Hùng lowered his head, his fingers tightly interlaced. In his eyes flickered a storm of conflict. On one side, the yearning to hold on to the old house. On the other, the voice of reason urging him toward a future that might hold far greater opportunities. When Mrs. Ha tactfully stood up to leave, giving the young couple space, the small courtyard was left with only Hùng and Hoai Ca. The late afternoon sun slanted down, casting pale streaks of light through the leaves of the newly planted trees. Hoai Ca gently clasped Hung's calloused hand, her voice soft yet resolute. Don't worry too much about me and Tony. Whether you're near or far, my heart belongs only to you. You can work and just come home on weekends. We'll be fine. Tony and I can take care of each other. I want to be your solid support so you can pursue your path without hesitation. I don't want this love to be the reason you lose the career you've devoted 10 years to. Those simple words felt like a cool breeze easing the storm in Hung's mind. He gazed at her, eyes glistening. In that moment, he realized her love was not a chain binding him, but an embrace of compassion, sacrifice, and a willingness to step back so he could move forward. Hùng squeezed her hand tighter, his voice choked with emotion. Thank you, Ca. I'm grateful for everything you've given me and Tony. At that very moment, Mrs. Ha turned back and added a final reminder before leaving. Hùng, I only hope you think very carefully. A rash decision can cost you so much. Weigh it well, and when you do make your choice, trust that your family will stand behind you. Hùng bowed his head in gratitude, his voice low and solemn. Yes, I promise I'll think it through and make the wisest decision I can. All I hope is that when the time comes, you'll all still be by my side, supporting me. Hoai Ca looked at him, her eyes brimming with tenderness. Hùng returned her gaze, his eyes deep and intent, as if etching every feature of her face into his heart. Yet behind those eyes, both concealed their turmoil and unspoken sorrows, afraid that voicing them would only add to the other's burden. In that silence, only the whisper of the wind rustling through the garden's branches bore witness to the love, the sacrifice, and the torment of two people standing at the crossroads of fate. So then, faced with his superior's ultimatum, what decision will Hùng make? Will he choose his career, continuing down a path full of hardships, but also bright with promise, or will he choose love, staying with Hoai Ca and Tony to protect the fragile home they've just built? Is there a third path, one where he can balance both, holding on to his ideals while safeguarding his love? And will their love be strong enough to overcome the barriers of distance, to withstand the test of time? For now, everything remains a mystery. Stay tuned for the next episode to witness the unexpected twists to come.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người câu chuyện tình yêu của mẹ đơn thân Ly Hoai Ca và cảnh sát Hùng. Như mọi người cũng đã biết đấy thì đến bây giờ thì mẹ đơn thân Ly Hoai Ca và cảnh sát Hùng đã trở về bên nhau và sống hạnh phúc. Tuy nhiên con đường tình yêu của họ thì đang gặp rất là nhiều trắc trở, do là con đường công danh sự nghiệp của Hùng hiện tại đang vấp phải khó khăn khi anh phải có lệnh điều chuyển công tác đi một nơi khá là xa, cách nhà khoảng 130 km, và điều này khiến cho Hùng cảm thấy không muốn rời đi, bởi vì anh rất là sợ xa Hoài Ca và sợ rằng nếu như mà anh đi xa thì khả năng để có thể lấy lại căn nhà của anh thì cũng rất là khó. Vậy thì liệu Hùng sẽ lựa chọn gì khi anh chỉ có một tuần nữa để quyết định cho việc sẽ chọn sự nghiệp là sẽ đi xa làm, hay là anh sẽ chọn ở bên Hoài Ca và Tony để tiếp tục đi buôn bán? Mọi người hãy cùng đón xem ở tập sau để biết thêm chi tiết nha mọi người.